Hey everyone, Catch 'em All Collectibles here. In today's video, we're going to talk about market manipulation in Pokemon. We're going to talk a little bit about comp culture, and let me show you my outline on the little presentation I'm going to give you. This first outline slide, I'm going to talk about what comp culture is. Comp culture is like when you go to Instagram, when you go to YouTube, and a sale happens, Heritage, Golden, Fanatics, eBay, wherever it happens, and private sale, and immediately it's like, hey, this card went for this price, and people start oohing and ahhing, and it's like, hey, that's the new price. That's the comp. That's the new price that every future item needs to transact based off of that. It makes some amount of sense, and I'll tell you why it makes sense and why it doesn't make sense at times. And I'll give you, right after I go a little bit deeper on what comp culture is on this outline slide, I will give you two examples of manipulated items, a Poncho and a Loach. If you don't know what a Loach is, you will find out in a couple of minutes. I found out 10 minutes ago when I Googled what a Loach is, or what Barboach is specifically. We'll talk about that. But yeah, comp culture, I kind of almost entirely covered it in that 15 seconds. Comp culture is an item transacted for this, other people paid this, theoretically, maybe, maybe not, and so you should too. Everyone should too. That is now the new price, and prices change though. Prices move. We'll talk about in a future slide liquidity and fungibility, why price of one thing might not match another thing, and we will end with don't blindly pay what someone else did. That is not a typo. That is intentional. We will get to it when we get to it. But yeah, let me go over to my other thing and let's talk about the Poncho card. So comp culture. Comp culture is when this card for a long time was going for $5 grand-ish. $5 grand-ish somewhere in here back in November, December. And then cards just started going up. One, it's like, if people firmly stuck on comp culture, it's like, this is what I go for, prices could never move up or down. So it's just unreasonable. It's like, people are always going to be willing to pay more or less. Supply, demand, how that all equilibrates is how we get price movements. But I'm going to show you how, and this is alt.xyz for anyone wondering where I'm using for the price. And this is 207 XYP. This is the Mega Charizard X. This is the blue Mega Charizard X Dragon type Poncho Pikachu. But if we scroll a little bit back, buy now 76.33, buy now 10,000, 95.75, 9,500. Price is going to vary. It is not fully liquid, not fully fungible, as other things are that we'll talk about on the next slide. But let's go back and let's look at what was going on about a month or two ago. I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, but okay, all these as far as we know, they're likely paid. Just because something is paid doesn't mean it's fully valid either. One thing that goes on, and I don't think it's not ubiquitous in the market. It's not going on. All the prices aren't fake. I've heard some people say like everything is just investors selling to investors. It's just people pumping, shilling, and dumping, and none of it's real. No one's actually valuing any of this stuff. I'm not trying to say that, but what I'm trying to say is look at alt. Shout out to alt because eBay is not as good with this. Fanatics is a bit better than eBay. Fanatics will actually delete sales that don't get paid from their sold items after 2 or 3 weeks. So if you look after a Fanatics auction ends, it'll show things in the sold, as far as I understand, for like a week or two until they end up not getting paid. If they get paid, they stay there forever. If they end up getting canceled, they do get deleted from there. But I think there's like a short window where they show up as sold before they're technically paid. So you have to be careful. But all these ones, as far as we know, they're good. Some of these might have been a consigner shilling their own items. Some of these might have been a consigner paying a 3% fee. Yes, you can pay that low 5%, 3% fee, depending on how expensive it is, who you're selling through. But yeah, just because it's paid doesn't mean it's real. And just because it's sold doesn't mean it's paid. I should be able to continue lower here. Yes. So look at this from July 1st, when we were really booming. I'm actually going back further. So I'm going back all the way to April. Look at the sheer amount of unpays. Some funny business was going on with this card since April. It's been 5 months since April. Unpaid, relisted, relisted, unpaid. Meanwhile, the card was going up. But how much of this was like, I'm not going to get to the root source of all of it, I'm sure, within this short video. But one issue is like, hey, the card was selling for 6,300. 5150, 5300, 5990, 50, all below 6, then 6500, 6000, 6300. Then there was a $7,200 best offer that went unpaid. Did this 6900 happen because they saw the 72 and they thought they were getting a deal? I don't know, that's speculation, but it's like I have seen people look at a transaction on eBay, on 130 Point, on Finex, on Alt, wherever, and then just be like, hey, I'm comfortable to pay this because it looks like someone else paid this. And it might not always be the case. It might not always be real. Look at the sheer amount. Part of the reason that I'm making this video, part of the reason that I'm showing this card in particular, I was copying this card because I was potentially buying one from somebody who they were borderline consigning it with me and selling it to me. Ultimately, they didn't end up selling it to me, and they haven't sent it in for consignment yet. I don't know if they're going to, but anyways, look at the sheer amount of relists, unpaid, funny business was going on. And anecdotally, talking to other people who do consignments, there's been a stretch where Ponchos, more than anything, they have a much higher unpaid rate. At least they have in the past few months than many other cards. Somehow we worked our way all the way up to 12,000. And then look at this. It was from August, July 28th to August 21st, nearly a month, 3 weeks, 3 full weeks, that every single one picked up by Alt was relisted, unpaid, invalid. That was when they were starting to, like, they had peaked, they started to tick down a little bit, and people were just trying to make that not be a thing, try to make that not happen. So just be careful out there. This is like a clear demonstration of some funny business, some manipulation going on. Don't just say like, hey, this ended for this price, so I'm going to pay some % of that, because it might not even have been real. And we'll get to it at the end, but like, even if it was confirmed to be real, just because someone else paid it, you don't know their circumstances. Your circumstances might not apply, and maybe it's not as reasonable. And ultimately, it's like, you're an adult, do whatever you're going to do. But be wary. Be wary of comps. Be wary of the market prices, market manipulation that's going on out there. So this one is more of like a tongue-in-cheek. This one is more of like just a nod to a funny experiment, in my opinion, that Brian over at Pokieni has going on. So for the uninitiated, if you are unaware of what I'm talking about here, a loach I talked about on my outline slide, I looked up what is Barboach. Barboach is a loach. I did not know what that was, but apparently Barboach is one, or resembles one, some kind of aquatic creature looking like a Barboach. But Brian made a video I will link above. He is trying to, for the memes, institute a buyout on this card. I think the market price at the time was showing a couple cents. It over 10x'd. It is up significantly. Thousands of items sold. I think TCG Player is like fully glitching out. It's only showing 244 items sold in the past 2 days. It's actually thousands. If you go through, the floor has been risen from 2 cents all the way up to 30 cents. And just, yeah, go check out his video if you want to see. He's not doing it in a devious way, but he's kind of using his platform, using his power for the memes, for the kicks, for the laughs. And yeah, overall, I think it's a funny, interesting thing. I'm not partaking, but it's funny to watch what people can do, because some amount of time, whether it's with the Ponchos, whether it's with other cards, there are people in Discords, in various communities, in various group chats that genuinely do try to pump and dump different markets. They genuinely try to buy out a bunch of stuff, and they try to sell it on people later after bumping up the price like crazy. That is a thing that goes on. I don't think it's like everywhere in the hobby. I don't think it's like running rampant, but it is a thing that you should be aware of its existence, and you should just, yeah, information is power. Arm yourself with the information and knowledge, and don't get got by it, I guess. So let's go into our conversation on liquidity and fungibility. That Barboach thing, the Poncho thing, could not be done in a market where market price is actually a thing. I made a video a couple years ago now. I think it aged well, but I said market price is not a thing in Pokemon cards. I made that video shortly after I sold my trophy cards, a few of my trophy Pikachu cards, to Rusty, TCA Gaming. And I talked about how there were some comps, but there weren't many. And we kind of like needed to determine between buyer and seller. So seller, me, and buyer, Rusty, we needed to just determine. We needed to establish what the market price was for us. And just because he paid that doesn't mean other people had to. That was just a data point. That was not, it was a comp technically, it was a data point, but that was not the market price. That was just what two people transacted at. But the higher liquidity, the higher fungibility, and the higher depth of the market, the more market price is a thing. I'm going to define those terms a little bit. Liquidity is like the amount and the ease of transactions. And fungibility is the ability to exchange one for another. So if I have $200 bills here, I'm going to grab $200 bills. Let me go full screen for a second just to show you. Like, I have $200 bills. They're fungible in that one is all crinkled. I crinkled one into a ball, and I could still go to the grocery store. I could still go to the restaurant. I could go wherever. I could deposit this in the bank and it will be worth what this one is worth. Barring some collector caring about like the serial number, whatever it may be. These things are equal value, and that's anywhere in the world to anyone in the world because of the depth of the market. These things are interchangeable. One is worth what the hundreds of millions, the billions of other $100 bills, they're all worth the same thing. And that is fungibility, and that is liquidity as well. And then the depth of the market on something like the $100 bill, Apple stock, Bitcoin. If you have one Bitcoin and I have one Bitcoin, we can trade them and they're going to be the same thing. If I have if I have a Venusaur from base set first edition, well, mine is third party encapsulated by PSA that it's a 10 out of 10 condition. So that is a perfect card, right? I'm not going to trade this. You're not going to take your Venusaur and crinkle it up and then I'm going to gladly change hands with you, right? Because it's not fungible, because one Venusaur is not like the other. And we'll talk a little bit about the case around it. We'll talk a little bit about how the PSA grade, the CGC BGS grade, they do add liquidity to a card, but they don't make it as liquid or fungible as a $100 bill, an Apple stock, or Bitcoin. Bitcoin even, again, if you want to get into the nuance, if you've got one of the original Apple stocks from one of the founders, if you've got a physical, maybe there's some additional thing there. Bitcoin, if you're able to unlock Satoshi's wallet and you're able to pull one, I feel like people would pay more money to get from that original wallet that Satoshi started mining things that I don't think Bitcoin has moved from for since the beginning. If you could deposit one of those into someone's wallet, I feel like they'd pay some like silly premium on it. But whatever the case may be, $100 bills, Apple stocks, Bitcoin, peak liquidity, peak fungibility, peak depth of market. There are literally billions of people in the world that see and recognize the value of this. And in Pokemon, peak liquidity, peak fungibility, peak depth of market, packs, booster boxes, booster box cases. That is where I primarily transact. That is where every Monday, and today is Today is September 8th. I am currently buying the following packs. Every Monday I have a hot buy list for my live streams. I need to keep the pack rippers fed. So feel free to reach out if you want to sell me anything. I don't care if it came out of a mini tin. I don't care if it's in a sealed tin. I don't care if it's in a sealed ETB. Packs to me are packs. I do buy sealed booster boxes. I do buy sealed booster cases at a premium. But if it's a random collection box, if it's a loose pack, I don't care if it's crinkled. We've opened over 120,000 packs on our live streams this year. And at the end of the day, it's like they are the singles that they deliver to the buyer. That's all they are to me. And one is the same as the other. So when someone buys a 36-pack lot of 151 from Ponga or BK, they're not saying like, hey, that bottom left one over there and whatever, like a pack is a pack, a box is a box, right? Again, a bit more than the $100 bill. You got to talk about the serial number. You really got to get way in the weeds to find difference between $200 bills. With booster packs, booster boxes more so, booster cases. If the stop tape is kind of folded up and crunchy looking, and if the heat label on the end is kind of blackened out because it got roughed up because it got friction over time, if it was in the sun and it's kind of like faded away. So liquidity can suffer, fungibility can suffer, and liquidity can suffer because of like physical changes, physical issues with those that you don't really run into on the top tier. PSA graded cards, as I talked about, PSA 10 Venusaur, I'm not going to trade it for a raw Venusaur of any kind. BGS, CGC, anytime you put it in a third party opinion, encapsulate it, preserve that condition, you are going to increase its liquidity, you are going to increase its fungibility, and you're going to make it so, again, it won't have a firm market price the way a $100 bill does. It won't have a firm market price. The bid-ask spread on Apple stock, the bid-ask spread on Bitcoin, remarkably tight. So much tighter than the bid-ask spread on 151 booster packs or things like that. And then a tier down, higher percentage, you're going to have a much higher bid-ask spread on a Gem Mint 10 Venusaur from base set first edition. And within PSA graded cards, there's going to be a spectrum as well. A PSA 10 Van Gogh is a lot more liquid, much higher pop, much higher market depth, much more fungible. Whereas when you have a Gem Mint 10 that has a much lower pop, that people know that the print quality was a lot lower back then, people are going to be more discerning. They're going to be more discriminatory towards the actual condition of the card. They're going to be buying the card, not the grade. Whereas if you're selling a PSA 10 Moonbreon, it's much more likely people would blind buy that than to buy a vintage card, PSA 10 blind. Raw cards, the cheaper they are, if you're selling to a, depends on who you're selling to too. If you're selling to someone who's going to play the game with the cards, yes, there's a game you can play with these cards. As long as it's LP plus, as long as it's near mint plus, they can put it in their deck sleeve, play it in their deck. Who cares? If you're selling a Moonbreon Raw and it's got a bunch of white dots and it's got a scratch and it's not going to 10, it's going to be less fungible. It's going to be less liquid than a true near mint pack fresh, right? And the more expensive you get, the more, again, discriminatory people will be for the true condition of the card. So yeah, those are conversations on, I guess a little bit of it. I started on market manipulation and this and that. Liquidity and fungibility aren't directly related. I don't know what I will have titled this video, but hopefully I have a title and a thumbnail combination that kind of addressed both the market manipulation thing. That's probably the thing that will get people to click. That's the thing that will drive emotion. And then liquidity fungibility is just an interesting conversation to have because it is extremely relevant as a collector, investor, flipper, scalper, whatever you are. These things matter. These things matter. And higher on the tier list you are, the more market price is a thing. And that's actually, let me tie it into that whole thing. It is significantly more difficult to manipulate the higher you go up. I promise you, no one watching this video has the ability to manipulate the $100 bill value. 10-year treasuries, the $100 bill, it is always inherently, fundamentally, intrinsically worth $100 by definition. But like the US dollar does move relative to the yen, relative to the euro, relative to every other currency, relative to gold, silver, relative to 151 booster packs. But no one in here, by definition, can manipulate the Bitcoin market, the Apple stock market, the $100 bill market, because they are peak liquidity, fungibility, and depth. Mostly the depth thing. We don't have trillions of dollars to throw around. But as you go down the list, they get a bit more, I guess, cheap raw cards. Shout out to the Barboach. They would be a bit more easy to manipulate than expensive raw cards. But as you move down the list in liquidity and fungibility, you kind of do get almost a bit more. Depth of market is really where it hits. Sun and Moon, XY era booster boxes. A lot of those kind of hit a peak, kind of tapering down. Again, just because one person paid it, it seemed like everyone had to pay it now. Everyone had to sell. Each successive box had to sell for more than the last comp. But now we see things cooling. We see people actually coming down a little bit. Not on everything, but on some things. But yeah, most of that has to do with depth of market more than liquidity and fungibility. But going back to our outline really quick. Last thing, do not blindly pay what someone else did. I just have a silly thing I wanted to share here. Do not fall for it. So I'm going to give you a comp. So Krispy Kreme, they are putting on a Harry Potter promotion. You can go and you can buy your Gryffindor, your Slytherin, your, I always mix these two up, Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw, the two houses that nobody cares about. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite Harry Potter house is. Give me a donut emoji if you made it this far, and let me know your Harry Potter house. Gryffindor and Slytherin are the two places to be. Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. Does anything ever happen in those houses? I'm a pretty big Harry Potter fan. My wife is a much bigger Harry Potter fan. We recently went on our 10-year anniversary trip to Rhode Island, and on our way, we passed through roughly Mohegan Sun. Mohegan Sun has 2 Krispy Kremes in it. And we went there on our way home trying to get some of these Harry Potter donuts because I'm in upstate New York near Syracuse. There are no Krispy Kremes near me. Closest ones are in New York City, over 4 hours away. So while we were passing through, we're like, let's get my wife. She's a very big, I'm a big Harry Potter fan. She's an extremely big Harry Potter fan. And Mohegan Sun didn't participate. They didn't have them. So when I got home, I went to Discord. I went into the Pokenomics Discord and I said, hey, I want to buy some donuts. Let me know what it's going to cost. I don't care. It was my wife's 10th anniversary. We went to some fancy dinners. We spent a couple grand on a weekend vacation. We had a great time, but it ended with like a negative. It ended with a negative in us failing on our adventure to get some Harry Potter donuts. So I said, whatever it costs, I don't care. I'm getting her donuts. And I reached out to Discord and shout out to Drew. Shout out to Drew, and I will put on the hat for you, Drew. I did send in office hours. I sent a picture, but he got me 4 Krispy Kreme hats and all. I wore it the wrong way in my picture initially. My kids got them. My kids were, oh, I didn't know you could pull it out. I got a big head. You can pull it out to match your head size. But I wore it this way, the wrong way. Apparently you're supposed to wear it this way. Yeah, not now my head's too big and it falls apart entirely. But we're falling apart here at the end of this video, just like this hat is. But anyways, shout out to Drew. He came through and I paid $144. I was thinking I was getting 12 donuts, so I paid a clean 12 bucks a donut. I ended up getting 15 donuts. He got me 3 Sorting Hat donuts. My wife ended up being a Slytherin. My daughter was a Gryffindor, and my son was a Ravenclaw, I think, or a Hufflepuff. Again, I always mix up the two because they don't matter as much. But anyways, just because I paid $1.44 for these donuts, I think it makes an interesting conversation. Maybe I'm just crazy. I'm definitely a little crazy. But I wanted to talk about it in a live stream. I wanted to make a video about it. I ended up going the video route. But I paid $36.26 for the donuts, was his actual cost. You don't want donuts to be in the mail for a long time, so we did like UPS next day air, and it was right before the Labor Day weekend holiday. $76.16 for 15 donuts. And I paid $1.44. I gave him a solid tip there for his time, for his effort. And my wife was thrilled. She was happy. Actually, it brought a tear to her eye. She was so happy. So happy anniversary to my wife again. And yeah, just because I paid it doesn't mean every Krispy Kreme donut in the world is now worth, if you do $1.44 divided by 15, it's $9.60 a piece. Most people, not most, I don't even know. I don't know how ubiquitous Krispy Kreme is around the country, but many people in the world, in the country at least, can go into their local Krispy Kreme and pay like $3 a donut, under $3 a donut with tax out the door. So under $3 a donut is like what these go for. I paid $9.60 a donut. I paid more than triple MSRP. And once I gave you the context, it's like wife 10th anniversary. They're 4+ hours away from us. Are we gonna go drive 4 hours? No. Are we gonna drive 2 hours out of our way on our way home from our honeymoon? No. So it was a reasonable transaction that I was happily a part of. We easily could afford adding $144 to our financial spending this year. Check out my financial spending from last year. Pretty reasonable given my cash flow, net worth, all that stuff. It's like $144. So just because there might be somebody out there that has a $100 million net worth spending $10,000 on a funny Pikachu wearing funny clothes, that doesn't mean you should too. Just because someone out there with way more money than you have, and this is not talking about me with the donuts, this is talking about someone with 100 Black Labels, some with tons of ponchos, whatever it may be. You don't know their situation, and just because they value it that way doesn't mean it's ridiculous. Some people might let me know in the comments below. Was this insane? Am I insane? Was this ridiculous? I think it was a, oh yeah, here's the context. Here's the 10th anniversary dinner context. We spent $300 on this dinner. Here are 6 of my plates and a salad. These are the 6 plates that I ate. The Nordic in Rhode Island. Fantastic dinner. Google the Nordic, Rhode Island. If you are within 4 hours, it is worth going to the drive and eating a dinner there. These are the 6 plates I have. $140. It includes tip and all. We gave some extra, even though it technically included all the gratuities and all that. We spent $300 on a dinner. I can make dinner at home for $5 or $10. I can go out to a normal restaurant for $20 or $30, whatever it may be. We spent $300. I spent $144 on 15 donuts. It's all arbitrary, a little bit to an extent. Donuts actually have some intrinsic value. They provide you food, right? They provide you nourishment that you need, at least every few weeks to survive. Cars don't do that. Cars don't do that. The intrinsic value of all this stuff is zero. Market price is not a thing. Manipulation is a thing. And do not fall for it. Do not fall for the manipulation. I heard someone is out there shilling Krispy Kreme donuts at triple MSRP just because that crazy man paid triple plus MSRP. And just because he was very happy, his wife was brought to tears how happy she was with it. Just because that is all the case does not mean you should go out and value them the same. Does not mean you should go out and buy them for the same price. Especially if you're lucky enough to live close enough to one to just pay market and not get scalped on them. But thank you, Drew, for scalping me. Not all scalpers are bad. I was very happy consumer to be scalped on those donuts. With that, I appreciate everyone watching. I will catch you all later.